Live from the 607, it is the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, where we're talking sports locally and nationally. Why don't you join in the conversation with the hashtag ODPH? Here we go. Welcome to another edition of the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour. I'm your host, Ken M. Sitting across from me this week is the one, the only, Padawan J.
Hello, hello, hello.
And joining us in studio yet again is your coach, my coach, the coach, Coach Duffy.
I'm glad I could come from my interdimensional plane to be here today.
We're going to get into that a little later in the show, but join us on the social media. Hashtag it up with us. Hashtag ODPH. The biggest sports story that we're going to be breaking down, though, had to be UFC 235 this weekend.
Woo, boy.
To say it was a show is an understatement. The UFC had one of its best cards on paper deliver on pay-per-view. Live from Las Vegas. I'll pass it around the panel. Thoughts on the card, starting with Pad?
Shout out to, I forget who it was, the guy that was fighting during the prelims who went to do the worm celebration and ended up dislocating his shoulder. That might have been the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
That is future light heavyweight champion Johnny Walker.
Yeah, shout out to him.
The people's champ, our champ.
Oh,
yes.
My God. That was incredible.
Yeah, that was an insane performance from, I will say this.
Relative unknown
to a lot of people, and he definitely took full advantage of his moment.
Yeah,
and gave one of the most devastating knee strikes to another fighter that I have seen. Now, it wasn't MVP Page versus Cyborg. It wasn't that bad, but it was close. And obviously, him rising up the ranks of the light heavyweight title. And the post-fight celebration, if you can call it that.
Find it on YouTube if you can't.
It's the MMA version of Grammatica years ago in the NFL.
Exactly. Yeah, it was wild.
I hit the green when you feel that. Oh, there goes Manny.
Yeah, it looked like Johnny was going for the worm. It appeared to be the dance move there and dislocated his shoulder.
Flopped awkwardly.
Which he flops and he does it, and then he's kind of lying there, and I'm like, and at first I'm like, oh, he's just taking in the moment. It's like overwhelming for him.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, and then the announcers, kind of go, wait, did he injure himself? And I'm like, no.
Like when he flopped down, I thought he just flopped awkwardly and was just like rolling over, like he got the wind knocked out of him.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when he's standing up and Joe Rogan comes out to do the post-press interview, and he's like, first question wasn't even like, what was that fight like? It was like, did you get hurt during the celebration? He's like, he just laughs. He's like, yeah, I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was honest about it. I mean, obviously beating Misha Kurkonov, I hope I pronounced that right. That was actually one of the more underrated light heavyweight title fights going on, or matchups, should I say, rather, not a title fight, because Walker has a lot of hype behind him if you follow MMA. If you don't, he's a name to watch because he is rising up the ranks very quickly.
Yeah.
And decimated rank.
I'll say the performance did earn him a performance of the night bonus after the fight card was over.
Absolutely. And then to round out the prelims, it was Zabit versus Jeremy Stevens.
Oh, boy.
This one had featherweight title eliminator implications all over it, and Zabit definitely weathered the storm.
Yeah.
And obviously, you got to say he's got to be in talks for at least a number one contendership for the vacated featherweight title. That, I mean, this is going to be really interesting to watch, and Zabit is just, put on a performance. Was it a, complete highlight reel one? No. But him and Stevens, I mean, Stevens definitely brought it to him. And you got probably, I would say, his toughest opponent to date. So where he goes from here, it's going to be really interesting to watch. And then now we jump into the main card. And the three fights that we're going to be breaking down, man, do we want to start with Askren versus Lawler?
Sure.
And let us go into that. Coach, your feelings on that fight.
I mean, obviously, the controversial finish, I mean, Askren got dumped on his head pretty hard, and we all thought he was out because, I mean, Lawler was just shot after shot after shot. Kudos to Askren for staying in it and recovering while getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they bring it over to the octagon. Askren gets in a good position, gets him on his back. Gets onto Lawler's back and starts going for a rear naked, and Lawler reverses out of it. But he was able to keep leverage and get him into a headlock. And, Herb Dean did what he had to do. I mean, he thought the fighter was at risk. Lawler was, looking like he was getting knocked, was unconscious because, I mean, he was getting the his brain squeezed. I mean,
Yeah.
he was trying to pop the watermelons. If you haven't seen that video, look for it on Facebook. It's Askren squeezing 2 watermelons and breaking them in half. But yeah, I mean, he had him in a bad position, and Herb Dean played the safe card by trying to break up the fight.
Yeah, this one was obviously coming in with a lot of hype. Ben Askren was finally traded over from one championship to the UFC for Demetrius Johnson. Long history of him not being in the UFC till finally he's here. It's a moment of his spotlight, taking on former welterweight champion Robbie Lawler. And the fight, like you say, Lawler had him on his heels at the beginning and gave him it almost looked like a pile driver from the WWE.
Yeah. I mean, it was straight on the back of his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a straight head drop. And Lawler, I thought he was going to finish him. I was surprised that the fight didn't stop there in the first.
Oh, yeah. I was having flashbacks of, like, previous fights we've seen where, like, one guy just beating the you-know-what out of the other guy. And it's like they're just going. I'm like, all right, are they going to call this?
Yeah, that's what I thought was going to happen. But Herb Dean didn't. I mean, he felt that Askren was defending himself enough.
Which, I mean, he was and kind of wasn't. I mean, after the initial drop and then Lawler got on top, those were free shots.
Right. It was one of those, it could have gone either way. And I was kind of surprised that it didn't go to Lawler's decision, but they let the fight continue. And then when they got against the cage and Askren put him in the Bulldog headlock, that's where the body language, depending on how you saw the fight, was really to play. Because I had to err in the side of caution with Herb Dean. When I was watching it, I thought as the camera angle looked, Lawler's arm went limp.
Yeah, we all saw it.
Yeah, we all saw it. But it's just one of those situations that obviously combat sports is very dangerous if you have a chokehold on too long.
Right.
You have to err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
And Herb, I thought, made the right call. Even though Robbie, I mean, he might just snap back, came right back to it, as he's trying to fight out of the hold. So I don't think this loss is going to be held against him by any means.
See, the thing with that, though, I don't want to interject for a moment. I don't think he was ever out because in previous instances where we've seen a guy get choked unconscious and they get up and they're almost running around like they want to knock anybody's heads off that's right in front of them, where they're kind of like, they kind of stumble, don't know where they are. But Robbie popped up and he was like, what the heck, bro?
Well, obviously, it was like we say, it was just the angle into the perception is reality theory.
Yeah, I mean, he had his arm, if I can paint the picture here, they were up against the cage, and Lawler had his right hand over Askren's head, and then at one point, while he was with his head around, with Askren's head arm, choking him out, Lawler's hand drops, and it looks like it drops limp.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't look like it's coming down for him trying to get leverage. It looks like it's limp. So that's when Herb went and checked, and did the WWE arm raise and wiggle, and he felt like it was limp, so he
and it was a really awkward position for Herb to check because it's not like he could get a full frontal view of like what was going on. He's kind of like at a weird angle, kind of looking down and in, like what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, I mean the angle, it was rough because they were right up against the cage, flush basically.
Yeah, and this is just one of those situations where Herb had to act on instinct. I don't fault it.
No, not at all.
And like I say, this fight I don't think is going to hurt Lawler long term. That I think in the UFC and obviously with Dana and the powers that be that make the fights, this isn't going to be held against him by any means. In fact, I have an idea who he's going to be fighting next, but we'll get into that a little later. As we go to the co-main event, and we already had the fireworks happen earlier on the main card too, with Cody Garbrandt and Pedro Munoz. Obviously, throwing some haymakers. Did I think we were going to have anything top that? Wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
But man, that co-main event had some fireworks.
Holy cow.
And then some. Kamaru Usman, 15-1 now, defeating the incumbent welterweight champion Tyrone Woodley. Thoughts around the panel about this fight?
Say, heck of a coming out party for, casual MMA fans for Kamaru there. I mean, obviously we here at the panel know who he is and we've seen his body of work, but for your casuals who they get a card every now and then depending on who's in the title fight, man, they're going to know who he is now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even call this a fireworks. I would just call this a domination because Woodley just was a lost puppy, and it was terrible to see. I mean, even his corner was calling him out for it.
It's almost like when you see in football where a team's got a game plan and then the other team is prepared so well that like
they just execute everything.
Your game plan's up in smoke. That was kind of how I saw Woodley. Woodley had a game plan. He game planned for it, but Kamaru was so prepared and so ready and just so outclassing Woodley that Woodley's like, I don't know what to do.
Well, I mean, it's just he was the deer in headlights. I mean, he's known for his takedown defense, and here's Usman getting him to the ground at will. and then dominating him on the ground at will. And, I mean, those body shots, the foot stomps, the overall just domination on the ground. I mean, Woodley, kudos to him. Now, I know I'm killing him right now for, that. But, I mean, he stayed in the fight and went 5 rounds and went to decision. But it's just Usman he's a scary dude.
He's absolutely scary. Like, there's no other way to put it, that this is just now a force in the welterweight division that you have to keep your eyes on. And obviously, like, the second round, I scored it on Twitter there on OD Parlay Hour as a 10-8. And I think that was the round that broke Woodley, in my opinion.
Well, then the third round was 10-8 too.
Right, because you get a first round, you lose in the judges' scorecard. All right, your opponent comes out the box firing, you weren't quite expecting it, but then you kind of figure you'll come back in the second, and if that doesn't work, that's when you're kind of like, oh crap, I'm in trouble.
Well, when your corner's sitting here saying, I'm gonna kick your ass if you don't wake up, that's an issue.
Yeah, it was very telling. Absolutely telling. And the thing was that Woodley, he just could not recover. I don't know if he took him too lightly. I don't know if it was just other factors going on.
Camp or whatever,
what have you. But just that second round broke him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then that third round when he was just eating those relentless body shots in the clinch.
Yeah.
That, I mean, they're almost sounding like gunshots going off.
I was showing, when we rewatched the fights, I showed my wife, I was like, look at those shots aren't just, those, like, like the normal body shots when you just got a guy in position and you're just trying to land some strikes just to get, some points on the judges' scorecard. Mm-hmm. So you're just throwing those little taps. Like Jones is known for doing that just to show that you're working. These weren't those. These were body shots.
No, these are, I'm going to break your ribs.
Yeah, these were like clubber, like he was cutting a tree down. That's what I said when we were watching the fight. He was literally cutting a tree down.
Yeah, and he just tore right through him. So, I mean, kudos to Woodley for sticking it out, but he just, like I said, he looked like he got broken in the second round and just never recovered, and Usman just wanted to make that statement that I do belong here, and then I should be the champion. And obviously, he won the decision, and then there was like the little post-fight fireworks with Colby Covington, who is doing everything in his power to,
get attention,
get some hype behind him. And it's already been said, Dana has already said that now Usman will fight Covington at a later point this year.
I'll say there was a photo, I saw on Twitter, there was a photo at like one point during Kamaru's fight that Dana was actually like, I don't know, because I don't know where Colby was sitting in relation to Dana, but like there was a photo of Dana talking to Colby like mid-fight or in between rounds with Kamaru, and I would presume or kind of guess that's where you kind of go, all right, listen, if this goes this way, you're getting the next fight.
Well, it only makes sense. Anytime you have an interim champion, or however you want to define it, you have to have them fight the recognized champion immediately. You have to unify belts. You can't have everybody just running around saying they're champion, and then you're like, okay, well, which one's which? It doesn't make sense. But for Covington, he definitely wanted to make himself relevant on this card because he didn't get the fight. And like I said on past episodes, he should have got the fight. But I don't fault Usman for getting it, and obviously Usman backed up his right to be in that fight, and he made a statement win. We talk about statement wins a lot and saying, oh, people need to make it. Did anybody make a louder statement win than he did?
Nope.
Not at all.
I was saying, not in recent memory. You want to talk about a guy that just rose to the occasion and just imposed his will. This is your definition of it. So obviously, like we said, Covington is going to be fighting Usman. There's a lot more footage coming out of some post-fights, antics going on in Vegas. I saw some video of that. I'm just going to remind everybody, did we not learn from Conor McGregor and Habib?
Yeah.
Fight in the cage, don't fight outside it.
I mean, the UFC learned from it because security was tight.
Yes. Yeah. But I'm just saying that now as they're leaving and they're running into each other at the hotels or casinos, wherever the video from TMZ Sports was from.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, you don't need to do this outside.
Twitter's fine. Twitter
is fine.
That's one thing.
Have a Twitter beef. But when you start going into the public and doing this, don't think this is not going to come back to haunt you.
Yeah, because especially if this gets into another situation like who was it, John Jones and who was it, Rumble? Or whoever it was, where they had the fight in the casino.
No, it was Cormier.
Thank you. Whoever it was. They had the fight in like the casino lobby. Like, if you get another situation with one of those, and it's not just, Colby and Kamaru, whoever it is, you got to think that the UFC will start coming down on them going, all right, you're going to pull this crap and make us look bad, make you look bad. We're going to pull you out of your next fight.
They're going to have to do something because, like we said, have we not learned from the incident in New York?
Yeah.
Where a dolly was thrown through a window, fighters were injured. You're now in a casino lobby or wherever they were.
With women and children around.
There's spectators that are not fighters involved. this is where, okay, I understand you want to build up some hype for the fight, but this is not the way you do it.
Well, that's why Nevada changed the rules, though. That's why they can review anything that leads up to the fight for suspension. So
Exactly, and they're smart about doing that. And, and like I said, I want to see the Covington-Usman fight very, very badly.
I'm saying the Nevada Athletic Commission's got a long memory.
So, like I say, my piece of advice for that is keep it on Twitter, keep it at a press conference from a nice, safe distance.
So keep it on Instagram.
And then get into the cage and go nuts. That is my opinion for that. And then, as we say, the fallout from this, Woodley, I think, his next fight is going to be against Robbie Lawler. That is my early prediction, because I think Dana and the powers that be at the UFC are going to look past the whole Askren fight.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's a tough task for both fighters. I think that's a very realistic fight that can happen. And then, obviously, whoever wins that is back in title contention.
I'd say so.
As for Askren, I've already heard he wants the winner of Darren Till, Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
I think if Till wins, Askren is going to be fighting, or Askren should win that one outright, because Till, I've not seen a lot with his wrestling game, but Till has hands, so he can throw them. Masvidal, it would be a little better matchup in my opinion, but I could see it going either way. That's going to be a fun one when that happens. But if Askren gets the winner of that, which I think that makes a lot of sense too, you can't go wrong with that.
No.
And then as we get to the main event, it was a decision. I mean, it wasn't the only decision on the card. To round out the main event, main roster card, Weili Zhang defeated Tisha Torres by unanimous decision. We get to the main event, and John Jones, Anthony Smith. Thoughts about this fight, starting with Pat?
Well, I think it was, I forget which commentator it was that said it. It went the way they said it would, where John looked at the tape of Anthony Smith, figured out what it was he did best, and turned it against him. You know, I won't say Anthony Class wasn't 100% outclassed, but it was a very dominant win for John.
Yeah. Coach?
I mean, this was a training session for John. It was just a glorified sparring session. He was implementing new things. He even said in the post-fighter, he was implementing new things that he hadn't tried before and wanted to see how it worked. And he did it and executed and still won. So this guy can have a training session with somebody who's quote-unquote the top contender and still win by decision.
Well, I mean, if you want to break it down from the simple aspect, if you look at the top 10 that's in the light heavyweight championship or
division,
thank you, Smith had earned his right to be there.
Yeah,
and it was a heck of an underdog story going against John Jones, because John, I mean, doing the quick turnaround from the Gustafsson fight, you're really not sure what we were going to get out of this. But as Coach broke down, John looked at what Anthony Smith does well. I mean, he throws hands, he gets in, he puts pressure on immediately. He definitely does his striking very, very well. And John just negated it so much that it took Smith out of it mentally and out of it physically for the fight. It's not that Smith wasn't trying to win, but John threw enough at him that he just could not get some shots going.
And John was throwing a lot of leg kicks in that fight, too, more so than... Now, he'll throw a leg kick or a leg check or what have you, but this was like headshot leg kicks, and I think I even said it when we were watching the fight. I'm like, he's throwing more leg kicks than he normally does.
Oh, absolutely. And it was smart, too, because Smith was doing that to him in the first round, which you don't see happen often.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great game plan, because if you keep John on his heels a little bit, you might be able to drive inside and obviously work some strikes. But Jones weathered the storm. And he did implement a lot more kicks. He did implement a lot more pressure on him. And then when he took him to the ground, that's where I thought the fight got a little awkward, I guess, to say.
Yeah.
Because it didn't look like Smith had any real game plan to fight off the ground. Like, he didn't think it was going to go there.
I'm not going to stick away. It was literally John just implementing his will.
Does he not get enough credit for... You hear about it a lot in sports where, like, you hear certain players like Peyton Manning being an absolute sponge when it comes to, like, game film and game prep. Do you think maybe John is in this same class? Because we've had plenty of fighters and plenty of contenders that, like, oh, John's next opponent is blank, Alexander Gustafsson, Daniel Cormier, what have you. That, oh, this guy will give him a real shot, and then they don't.
It's a good question. I mean, John just is
because the thing of it is this, like we said, this was a quick turnaround where he fought in December. It's now March, and he's fought again. To me, that doesn't seem like a lot of time, but for the amount of time it is, John absorbed all of this information, all this stuff and game plan, and then just dominated him.
Well, I think the thing is with John is he is a student of the game, and he's in a very good camp for MMA. So he came in with a very definitive game plan. and that was to take Smith out of his comfort zone where he wasn't allowed to strike. He was kept at a distance for a good majority of the fight. And if you can't work inside, well, what's the next thing you can do? You could try for takedowns, but he didn't want to go there with John. And then when John got him on the ground, it just didn't look like Smith had any game plan for like what to do out of it.
Right.
And I'm not saying that he hasn't been on the ground before. I personally haven't seen it, but it just looked like when he got on the ground, it was just survival mode instead of, okay, how do I game plan and get on the offense from here?
I just think it's funny because before when John was winning, it was, he's just so long. He's too long for the division.
Yeah.
That wingspan's too much. Then, obviously the Gustafsson fight, the first one. Then the second one, he absolutely dominated him. And now here we are again. Like, what is everybody going to say now? What can you say back to this now?
Yeah, you can't really say a lot about it. I mean, that's the scary thing. Is just it was so dominant of a performance that you kind of have to go in there now and go, okay, where do we go from here? Because John took out I would say the clear-cut number one contender in that division now.
The division is literally depleted.
It's not as strong, in my opinion, as it has been in past years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's think. So when John fought Gustafsson the first time, it was clear-cut Gustafsson the number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like, he's ready for this fight. When he fought Rashad Evans, it was Rashad Evans the next guy. He's ready for this fight. When he fought DC, it was, DC is the number one contender. Now it's like you look through it, and it's like he fought the number 3 guy. Right? Wasn't Smith the third in the ranking right now?
Third.
So it's like, he's already leaping over the second guy because he probably already beat. Who's in second right now?
Cormier.
I mean, so he's already beaten him twice. So they have to look for the third person in title contention. It's like, so where do you go from there?
Well, the heavy name that's getting thrown around now is Thiago Santos.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he did come off a great performance in UFC Prague, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that would make a lot of sense. I do think our guy, Johnny Walker.
That's where Johnny Walker comes in.
Johnny Walker definitely he beat the number 14 guy with Misha. So now where does he go? I think, in my opinion, is, okay, if we're going to really buy into the hype train, which, sometimes that happens with the UFC.
And look at John's title fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally the same story. It's the same play out.
But what I would do is, okay, Johnny Walker is ranked 15 right now. I would give him Anthony Smith. And I would say, okay. If you beat him, then we can put you into a number one contender match. Because I think he's still a couple fights away. I don't think he's there, but I would give him Smith. Smith is definitely a high name on the card. Or, you got to just kind of take a look at see who else is there. Like a Glover Teixeira. Just looking at who's on there.
Yeah.
So, there's a couple names, like I said, I would try, taking a peek at.
I'm saying throw in Johnny Walker and have it be the Rocky Creed story.
Let me just run through the division right now as it stands on UFC.com because the rankings haven't been updated post pay-per-view. And, I'll read the name off, and has he fought him? Daniel Cormier is number 1.
Yes.
Yep.
Alexander Gustafsson is number 2.
Yes.
This is John fighting.
Anthony Smith is number 3.
Yep.
Thiago Santos is number 4.
No.
Jan Blachowicz is number 5.
No.
Volkan Ozdemir.
Volkan fought Cormier, so he's off contention for right now.
Right. 7 is Corey Anderson. Then you've got Dominic Reyes at 8, Ilir Latifi at 9, and then Jimmy Manoa rounds out number 10.
But any of those names sound attractive to you?
No, because then you run after that. It's Glover Teixeira. All right, beat him. Ovin St. Peru. Beat him. Mauricio Hua. Beat him. Misha Serkinov, haven't fought him, and then
but would beat him.
Yeah, and then you've got Johnny Walker, who, assuming he doesn't hurt himself in a celebration at some point.
Well, that's the question: is like, where do we go from here with John? And there's only a couple avenues I see. Out of the people that we have mentioned that he could fight, Santos, I could see that fight. I'd say I would have the same reaction I would with Anthony Smith. He's earned his way to a title shot. I can't argue that. But I think John would beat him, in my opinion. I think he would. With Johnny Walker, that's the next guy that's got all the hype behind him.
Yeah.
And I still want to see him in a couple more fights.
Yeah, I can't justify giving a guy ranked like 15 a title shot.
I just say go
fights.
full Rocky, have the storyline be. I mean, Dana's a master of promotion.
Now the thing of it is I'm kind of with Ken. Like, maybe not an Anthony Smith, but like you got to give him another guy higher up in the rankings. Not necessarily like top 5, but like you got to give him another higher up fight. If he beats them, then you can give him a guy that's like in the top 5 that is willing to fight him. And then if he beats them, all right, then you can fight John.
I could see that too, just from a legitimacy standpoint. But I mean, at this point, with the way things are going, I mean, John's still going to sell tickets because he's John. But at the end of the day, people aren't not going to be like. People bought this pay-per-view because of the Woodley fight.
I'll say you can build, you can build up. And the thing of it is, you can build up Walker till he's ready to fight John. The reported gate for this card was a little over $4 million. You can have somebody come down and fight John. Something tells me for a $4 million gate, you're not going to have any issues finding somebody to fight John.
But wait, let's factor in a couple different things. Cody Garbrandt was on the card.
That's true.
Former bantamweight champion.
Right.
Fight of the night he did have.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even though that was a wild one, we didn't get into it, but I mean, he definitely had the fight of the night. Tisha Torres was on there against Weili Zhang. That one was kind of an underrated fight, but if you follow the sport, it's a very good fight. You had Ben Askren making his UFC debut with all the hype, so everybody that really follows the sport knows Robbie Lawler. And then you had 2 title fights. So, I mean, the card was just genuinely stacked.
Card was built, right.
Yeah, so I'm saying, but like I said, that's what drew the big gate.
And that's why I'm saying from a promotional standpoint, the way Dana thinks, it's like, how do you promote a John fight without having to stack the prelims to make it attractive? Because, when you put Conor on a card, it's going to sell because it's Conor.
Yeah, he just has that big following, and then it'll fill up everywhere.
And because there is the possibility that he's going to beat, somebody. But like John is so dominant right now that it's like, it's almost like you put him in the octagon with anybody, you have that feeling that he's going to win. So it's like, what do you do to promote the fight? Go full on, full blown, put the underdog in there, and let's build the story that way.
You can, or let me throw this to close out the segment with. If you are matchmaking for the UFC right now, where do you put John against?
I mean, you beg him and plead with him to move up, and you have him fight a heavyweight.
Who?
I mean, you know who can. Brock Lesnar.
Okay. Pad?
I see if you can get somebody to come down and fight him. I think if he really want, he can talk and say he wants to go out heavyweight and fight Brock till the sun comes down. But I think if he really wanted to do it, he would have done it by now. I think it's it's a fun idea he entertained in his mind. I don't think he wants to do it. I think at this point you find a name that is that's something that they don't necessarily have any plans for at the moment, that like isn't in a title contention, but isn't like so far down the list that it's almost like feeding them to the wolves. I think you find a guy, and I can't think of who, but like you find a name that like is, well, hey, for a little extra money, are you willing to go down and fight John?
It's a tough call.
That's a steep cut for a heavyweight.
That's a steep cut depending on who it is. What I would do if I was the UFC, I would try doing 2 options. 1, I would try talking John into going to heavyweight. And the Lesnar fight is very appealing. Everybody wants to do that. I think that would be a huge, huge gate and a huge pay-per-view numbers that we haven't seen in many, many years. I would also try talking him into going against heavyweight and fighting Stipe Miocic. And I think that is a huge fight. If you want to talk super fights, Miocic is up there. You definitely have to throw it against John. And I think that one could definitely sell some seats too. Or, looking at the current light heavyweight roster, I think there's some names that could get up there. Johnny Walker is one that we are watching very intently here at the ODPH. But I would talk for one night only, and this is the story I'm going to sell you on. Does anybody remember who John beat to get his light heavyweight title shot?
It's been a minute, so I can't say I do.
Who he beat to get the title fight?
Yep.
Oh, God. I know who he beat to get the title.
No.
No, I don't.
At the time, I believe this fighter was undefeated as well, or maybe had 1 loss on his record. And John did defeat him to get to the title shot.
Holy crap, I'd never get this in a million years unless I didn't look it up.
Right. But now this fighter is a very, very well-known name.
The suspense.
Over in Bellator.
Oh, so you're never going to get this.
Oh, okay.
And that gentleman's name is Ryan Bader. And my proposal is this, because I think Bellator would be down for it. For one night only, Bader versus Jones 2, because Bader, since he's been over in Bellator, has been on a tear.
See, I thought the last time they fought it was for the light heavyweight title. John's been the light heavyweight champion for so long.
Right. No, I remember they won, and because I think they were both undefeated at the time.
Yeah.
Or because I'm not counting the Hamill defeat. That doesn't exist in my world.
No.
But if I'm not mistaken, Bader was undefeated as well.
I'm pretty sure this was the last time John fought on like a spike card, because from there on it was pay-per-view only for him.
This one was a pay-per-view, and I believe it was a co-main event.
Oh, really? Okay.
They were both undefeated going into their fight.
Looking at this without a computer. But my point is with this, if you take this for what it is, and I'm sure Bellator would be willing to do it, because I think this fight could definitely work for both organizations. Obviously, we've seen the UFC be willing to play with one. Why not Bellator? One night only. Bader, Jones 2. If Bader has really elevated his game, and he's been on a tear if you haven't been watching Bellator MMA, why not have him go against John? One night, let's see what happens. Because I'm sure Bader would do it at 205.
No, trade for him.
Well, I don't think they're going to do a trade, because I think that would be a little too messy. But I think Bellator would be willing to do the cross-promotion one night only. Either way, UFC 235 had fireworks, it had storylines, it had so much going on. It even had somebody get injured in a post-fight celebration. You can't beat it, folks. But let us know what you thought of the card. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. What was your thoughts on UFC 235 moving forward? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Vince, the Common Man Ciatoy, local MMA fighter, telling you to keep on listening to the ODPH, the 607's up-and-coming newest podcast. We knew right where we'd be, floating on the airwaves, you see. It's a heartbreak, soul-shake radio attack, taking 4 steps forward and no steps back.
Coming back for segment number 2 on this week's ODPH, and we were talking on parlay points. If you haven't followed the ODPH blog on OchoDuroParlayHour.com, some late-breaking baseball news broke after the podcast. Pad, break it down for us.
As a wise man once said, dollar bills, y'all. Bryce Harper has finally signed. The long national nightmare is over. The folks that produced the MLB The Show video game can finally finish the cover for the video game. For those who don't know, there is a video game for PlayStation that comes out every year for Major League Baseball, and they feature a cover athlete, like most sports games do. They chose Bryce Harper as their cover athlete. I want to say it was back in like October, November or sometime. This was after he had already said he wasn't going to re-sign with the Nationals. So for like the last 6 months or so, the pending cover has been him in a hoodie. Until they could, so finally, the game comes out this month in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and they can finally settle on a cover. He has signed with the Philadelphia Phillies for a record-breaking 13 years and $330 million, beating the previous record holder of Giancarlo Stanton's deal with the Miami Marlins that was 13 years and $325 million. Now, some notables with this contract. There is no deferred money. We'll get to that one in a minute. Also, there is a full no-trade clause, so for those who don't really know baseball lingo, basically they cannot trade him anywhere unless he says so, and he waives said clause. There is also a $20 million signing bonus paid in 2 installments, one on the 1st of June and then the second on the 1st of November. Thoughts on this monster deal, gentlemen?
This is wild to me. Absolutely wild.
Uh-huh.
I applaud Philly for pulling it off, even though 13 years committed to a player is a very, very long time with a no-trade clause.
So it should be noted, he is 26 years old, so that by the time he finishes the contract, he will be 39 years old.
Exactly.
And Bobby Bonilla will still be getting paid.
This is true. Nobody is beating that contract anytime soon.
I don't know. Like I said, we'll get to it in a minute. Bryce could have.
He could have, but we'll break that down a little bit later. For the Phillies, this is a great move. I think for them to have pulled this off, I applaud them for it. But for me, I struggle with giving any professional athlete a contract over 7 years. Mm-hmm. That is me personally. I think that anytime you get over 10 years, and we've seen with baseball contracts throughout the years, they have not exactly panned that well.
No.
This is just my opinion of it.
I can understand a 10-year contract if like the said player is in their early 20s, 21, 22, 23, even 24. Once you start getting past, 25, 26, then I'm like, all right, you realize how long this is going to be, and that's kind of when the tread in the tire starts wearing off by then.
Yeah, this is something that, if they can get him, and they're going to get him in his prime.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to get the best years out of this player. But still, for $330 million, this is a lot this is a huge investment. However to put it else, I can't. Coach, you have any thoughts on this?
It's crazy. It's just wild. Like, imagine, I get that they play 162 games a year, and that is very demanding. But, that's you can't even spend that in your lifetime.
I'll say, if somebody crunch the numbers, he will be making $49,000 every at-bat.
That is wild.
I'll say Philly and Major League Baseball is already seeing a return on investment for this because it came out today that Bryce Harper's Phillies uniform has become the number one selling jersey of all time in any sport for the player during its first 24 hours of being available.
I'm going to give him credit though, because something that I saw in the press conference there that he had, where he said that he didn't want to wear 34 for Roy Halladay.
Yes.
That was
real
a classic move.
That's class.
Yeah.
That's stand up.
Yeah.
So, but kudos to that. But it's just like, my God, that money is outrageous. They are playing a sport with a ball and a stick. Wild.
And it's even more wild, though, at the press conference, too. He did say he wanted to bring a trophy back to DC.
Hey,
I know it's a
work
slip.
on that.
I know
He's
it's a
gotta work
slip,
on
but
that.
it's
And
like,
it's like I told you, they're paying the man so much money, he can say whatever he darn well pleases.
this is true.
Well,
I'm just,
not to that fan base in Philly though.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
that's a fan base you don't want to get angry at.
They got a short fuse.
Absolutely. So for him, he's got a huge amount of pressure on his shoulders.
Oh God, yeah. This is one of those contracts, and especially you get this a lot with 10-year contracts. No matter what team it is, but you look at a city like Philly, who are very diehard fans.
Yeah,
they are very passionate. This is a contract that it's like, if they are not in playoff contention, if not World Series contention, I will say this year they'll be a little sour. Next year, if they don't make the World Series, there will be some very unhappy people.
Well, I know that next year I think they're eyeing one Mike Trout to join the team.
Yeah, which the scary thing is you look up their numbers side by side. Statistically, Mike Trout is better than Bryce Harper, and in my own opinion, Mike Trout is better than Bryce Harper in every category in baseball.
I agree with that.
So, Bryce Harper got $330 million. What's Mike Trout going to get? Early reports and rumors are saying that the Angels are floating out $350.
I fully think that we're going to see with Mike Trout a $400 million contract.
That's a lot.
I know. This
350 is a lot.
Is Jeff Bezos owning the team?
I have this odd feeling, and this is just if Bryce is getting 330, Trout's getting 350, 400 mil, and this is absolutely incomprehensible.
Like when is it enough?
Exactly. This is where baseball is going to have to implement a hard cap.
Something like it's madness.
Yeah, players are just getting thrown guaranteed money, which kudos to them. I'm not mad somebody's getting paid.
No, absolutely not. Kudos to you, but my God.
But this is just the line needs to be drawn somewhere.
Yeah.
When you are making somebody's general annual salary in one at bat with one strike,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, to put the mathematics behind it is nuts, and especially
the micro.
Yeah.
Even the micro level of things is nuts.
Yeah. And now to see where they go next year if they get Trout.
Well, if they get Trout, that'll be wild. They do have a very good team this year. They added Andrew McCutchen. They did get JT Realmuto from the Marlins, who was very touted, very sought after, player from the Marlins. We'll see where they go. We did reference it earlier. This could have been absolutely crazier because it was reported by Barry Svrglula. I'm sorry if I butchered that name, from the Washington Post. This could have been more batshit crazy because because of course we all know, and it's been well reported that the Washington Nationals offered him a 10-year, $300 million deal in this past season. We found out some more details. And this is how he could have beat the infamous Bobby Bonilla contract. Reports say that according to sources from Barry, that this made Major League Baseball uneasy was that there was about $100 million in deferred money that would have paid Bryce Harper until he was the age of 60. Which is just the fact that they were that desperate to get him that they're willing to go, yeah, we'll pay you until you're 60.
See, for me, I take that contract. So somebody who works in insurance and talks to people about saving money until 65, I'm taking that deal. I'm deferring that money and I'm letting that grow, and then I am banking on that all the way and through until I'm 60.
The whole buildup with this thing was just the wildest thing to me, because I was reading, a lot of the rumors and the writers were saying, and I read something the day he signed that said, the Phillies hadn't budged from $270 to $280 million. And I'm like, that's not going to be enough to get him, because for those who don't know, his agent is Scott Boras. And if you're an NFL fan and not a baseball fan, the easiest comparison I can give you is he's the Drew Rosenhaus of the Major League Baseball. The one thing every Major League Baseball expert agreed on, because his agent was Scott Boras, he was going to get one of two things: the biggest dollar contract in Major League Baseball history, or the highest, what you make a year contract. And boy, he got paid.
I wonder what Boris's cut is.
Oh, a new house.
I am still
he's
trying
not taking
to
10%. He's taking more.
I am still trying to wrap my head around how much it was. They said they were going to pay him until he was 60.
60.
Yeah, one source told Barry that it included $100 million in deferrals and paid Harper until he was 60.
Good night now. I have nothing on that.
And he passed on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I look at it like this. He really wanted to get out of Washington. I think
Right.
that maybe he felt for whatever reason he couldn't win there. And that's his prerogative. He has the right to do that. And obviously going to Philly, which, I mean, it's a division rival, which that's going to be very interesting when those teams play, is saying something. And obviously with all the teams that were involved, I mean, the Yankees were lightly rumored. I honestly thought he was going to go to Chicago this entire time, and he didn't.
I look at it this way. The Washington deal was absurd. And if the deferral thing is true, that's even more absurd. But I kind of look at it from the player perspective, where he was drafted by them in 2010, number 1 overall pick. And then, he made his debut in 2012, where he really started playing. So, 6 years in, they made how many playoff appearances, and they did how much to improve the team?
Yeah, I mean, I can fully get it, but just for the amount of money that's thrown on the table with that is just...
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But the thing, I look at it kind of this way. I've been with the team for 6 years. You can throw me $1 billion, but if the track record isn't there that you're trying to improve the team and get better, and I'm sorry, Jason Worth and Jonathan Papelbon, yes, they're good players, but they're not going to turn a team into a title contender. If the front office and management isn't making every effort to improve the team, like I said, you can throw me $1 billion. I'm not going to sign with them.
Let me throw you this to close the segment out, starting with Coach. Obviously, Harper is now the big fish in the Philly pond. Do they win the World Series this year?
No.
I agree. I think they're going to contend. I think they got a great team. They could surprise, but as I'm saying right now, I don't think they get there. But if they get Mike Trout, they're winning.
Oh, yeah. No.
Could you imagine 2 $300 million plus players on your payroll?
Oof.
No.
Like I said, if Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon, ran the team, yes, I could see it.
Where do you even get, where does the income come to pay them?
I have no idea. I will tell you this. He is going to rake in that ballpark.
Concession stands, though, are going up.
I'll say ticket prices in right field are probably going to go up skyward.
This is a great move for the Phillies organization and its fan base, because now you have a superstar in there with a big contract, with big pressure to deliver. And obviously being in a smaller ballpark such as Philly has, Harper's going to put up huge numbers.
Oh, he's going to rake.
So it's going to be very interesting to watch to kick off the Major League Baseball season. But definitely let us know what you think. Hit us up on the hashtag ODPH. What's your thoughts on the Bryce Harper contract? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is the King of Lyle, Luke Visengard, Gladius 205 champion, and you're listening to the ODPH.
Coming back for segment number 3 on this week's ODPH, and there was some football action.
Yeah, there was. Holy crap.
Dare I say, it wasn't regular season games.
Nope.
It wasn't the AAF, which had a great weekend too.
It was still impressive as you know what, though.
Absolutely. It was the NFL Combine, where all the players that are going to enter the NFL draft show off their skill set for coaches, so their draft stock either rises or it lowers. We brought our coach in for the analysis. So, Coach, what was your takeaway from this weekend?
My takeaway is Kyler Murray is beloved, obviously, by a lot of teams, and stock has risen up. And I mean, really didn't put on a great show. I mean, he had a good performance, solid performance, but it wasn't amazing. Obviously, now rumors are going around that Arizona is going to do whatever they can to land him with the first pick and sell Rosen. So that will be an interesting move.
I mean, bull crap on rumors. Rosen jerseys are half price.
Yeah, I know. I still think that's a little bit of I think that's still, firestorm. I think they're just trying to get his name out there to make a team jump up and try and land him. I'm not 100% sold that's going to be the move. I mean, some guys that helped themselves were Metcalf out of Ole Miss.
Oh my God,
running a blazing what was it, a
4.33? Which,
man,
this dude's a monster. 6'3", 228 pounds. You just look at this guy. Like, I've seen photos. I think it's like in the Ole Miss weight room. It's like some team photo of like the receivers or some nonsense. And you just like, he sticks out like a sore thumb. The guy looks like a power forward that should be in the NBA.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a guy who hurt himself was Ohio State's former quarterback, Dwayne Haskins.
Yep.
Who did not run a good 40 time for a quarterback.
I'll say you wanted to give a shout out for 40 time Noah Fant of the Iowa College tight end, ran a 4.5 40, fast, just slightly faster than DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I mean that was madness. I ended up catching that one live, and that was crazy.
I saw the notification come across my phone from the NFL app, and I was like, "Wait, what now?"
Yeah, that was just mind-blowing. That, I mean, Fant just obviously just blew out Hopkins' record at the Combine. But it's the one thing about the Combine, though, is, I mean, everybody gets timed and everybody gets their, if quarterbacks, if they're throwing, everybody gets measured from their hand size to, height and weight, and, like, everything's supposed to be, like, this big, like, variable factor. And obviously when they get on there, you see players either rise up or they don't.
Yeah.
And obviously, I thought my biggest takeaway from this was all the defensive players that had huge performances.
Yeah, this is going to be a defensive draft for sure.
Yeah.
Quinnen Williams from Alabama.
Yep.
I think he might have got himself, if wherever he was going to get drafted beforehand, he might be in discussion, depending on what Arizona decides to do for the top pick.
Well, I was going to say, so I was working on a mock draft right before the Combine hit, and then things got crazy, so I didn't get it out there. But my top 10 really doesn't change. I still think it's relatively the same. The only difference is now with this, rumor with Murray going to Arizona, I actually think Oakland tries to climb up and jump up there to try and get Murray in the first round, or in the top 3.
With Gruden at the helm there, I can fully see that.
Yeah, that's the thing is that while Arizona's saying that they love him, and Rosen jerseys obviously are half price, I still think that Oakland's going to try and make a play. I mean, they have 3 picks to work with in this, so that's very, very attractive to an Arizona team that really isn't bad outside of really quarterback play. I mean, but they could go out and get a veteran to solve that issue.
Yeah,
that could at least manage the clock to get them to a Super Bowl. I mean, they still have Larry Fitz.
Yep.
They still have a very good running back, and they still have a very solid defense. So really, I mean, obviously a very young head coach, but outside of that, they're an experienced team. So I still think Oakland tries to make a play and slide up there for Murray. And as a Giants fan, I'm very concerned about Haskins right now.
Yeah, obviously the pro day the Combine didn't really help his stock. In our opinions, I think it was a collective, that he did not have a great weekend.
Well, he interviewed well, which is my concern, because teams will still take that leap to try and land him because he's a smart kid. Might not be a fast kid, but he's a smart kid.
But you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it's like you want somebody that knows what they're doing when they're in the huddle.
Right, exactly.
That's essentially what you want. They could have all the physical tools in the world, but if you can't run that offense and make changes and go on the fly, I mean, that's your intangible that really makes you stand out. That's like where the Peyton Mannings, have always can go up there and read every single defense known to man and change on the drop of a dime. Mm-hmm. Not the greatest physical athlete, but the smartest.
So my concern now, so what I was looking at was so Pittsburgh's going to, I think, make that trade with the Niners, and AB is going to have to go for a first round pick. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to take anything else less than that. So Pittsburgh's now going to have the second pick, and I think they go defensive player, anybody. I still had Bosa going 1. My worry is 3 with the Jets, because I see them trading that pick for whoever wants a quarterback hungry, whoever's quarterback hungry, which is either going to be Oakland, the Giants, Jacksonville, or even possibly Miami.
It's not going to be Jacksonville because
I know they're signing Foles, but that's not long term.
No,
and this is a very this quarterback position right now. I think if you get a guy like Daniel Jones or even Murray, even a city year, I think that's going to be way more advantageous for them in their careers because I still think a guy like Daniel Jones, although he played in an NFL system at Duke, is not right there right now for an NFL position as a starting quarterback. So a year behind Nick Foles will do him wonders going forward.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, obviously this draft is going to be wide open, and I don't have like any really, prediction. I mean, Arizona is the wild card of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just like Cleveland was last year, with Saquon or Quinn Nelson even, or Baker Mayfield or Darnold. There was 4 guys that really could have gone number 1 to Cleveland.
Yeah, because I think between Williams and Bosa, I mean, that's my 1-2.
I had 10. I think 10 out of the first 15 picks were defensive players.
Yeah, because this is just such a stacked class coming out.
Josh Allen out of Kentucky. I mean, it's just it's a lot of defensive players.
Montez Sweat coming on Mississippi State.
And it's wild too because I mean, you talk about the defensive lineman position as a position, and you have the edge rushing, which really has evolved as teams have kind of gone away from the true 4-3 and kind of gone to that 3-4 hybrid, with that flowing defensive end that's more of an outside linebacker than he is a D end. And then you look at the evolution as the defensive tackle, and Snacks Harrison, former Giant, now in Detroit, those run stoppers are now almost as pivotal as your edge rushers.
Well, as you've seen, I mean, how defenses work in the draft, work in the league. It's like you need that front line, you need stoppers, and you need somebody to get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And, I mean, now it's just even, like, that's kind of where the league has shifted. Not that it hasn't always been there, but there just seems like a more emphasis.
Yeah,
lately.
but the evolution of defensive tackle, I mean, defensive tackle was such an afterthought. Obviously Warren Sapp was there, but Warren Sapp was such a once-in-a-lifetime type player because he was a defensive tackle who could rush the middle and still get to the quarterback. So you don't see Warren Sapps very often. But now the defensive tackles with this emphasis, especially for teams that are running that 3-4 hybrid, where they need a guy who can both run nose tackle and the A gap. That's really important to have size there because you can't just be your average run of the mill defensive lineman. You have to be a 300-pounder to help handle these A gap guard and centers that you're going to be taking on.
Yeah, you're absolutely going to need that. And where it goes from here, I mean, a lot of teams I think are going to be making some moves as soon as they can start trading some picks. Because, I mean, the league starts their official business weekend, I believe, March 13th.
Yeah, so AB, a lot of those guys, obviously Odell's been in trade talks. I don't think that's happening, but I'm just saying, and then obviously a lot of the trades for the higher picks are going to happen while the draft's going on.
Yep.
So
yeah, especially when Pittsburgh trades for the number 1 pick from Arizona and sends AB out there.
Yeah, that's
I'll make that wild prediction.
I still think San Francisco's got to make that play. That's a move that they need to make.
They have to because I think actually Larry Fitzgerald was quoted in saying, be careful when you don't have an elite quarterback throwing to you. He said something along those lines.
Well, we could talk that AB thing because that is so wild. You literally have a Pro Bowl all-time top 10 quarterback who is throwing you passes, and then you're going to sit here and say that his timing is off?
Yeah.
I tell you what, Coach, we're going to take a quick break. And we're gonna, we'll kick off rounding the bases with that because I like where that idea is going. But overall, listeners, let us know what your thoughts were on the NFL Combine. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brian Wolf from Fair City Fire. You are listening to ODPH, the greatest podcast in Binghamton.
Woo!
So let's kick off that last segment with the local minute pad. What you got?
Oh, of course, local minute. Got to talk a little Binghamton Devils news because they had some games over the weekend. They on Tuesday, February 26th, they had a home game against the Syracuse Crunch where they lost 4-0. Then Friday and Saturday, March 1st and 2nd, respectively, they had away games against the Charlotte Checkers. They lost the Friday game by a final score of 4-2. And then they lost the Saturday game by a final score of 8-1. Looking ahead to this week, they've got 2 home games. First, Friday, March 8th at 7:05 against the Springfield Thunderbirds. And then Saturday, March 9th, game time 7:05 against the Americans. More information, binghamtondevils.com.
And we definitely got to give a shout-out to those Binghamton Bulldogs. Back-to-back 20-win seasons, and they got number 20 against Elmira on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a heck of a game. I was in attendance for it. But the Bulldogs, 10th ranked now in the ABA, getting ready for those playoffs, won 144-108 over Elmira. Chris Cartwright, the heart and soul of the Binghamton Bulldogs, 44 points, 10 assists. Derek Hart matched with 21 points, 7 rebounds. It was a crazy game, and obviously the Bulldogs now are getting ready for that playoff run because as we're recording, we have not heard who they're going to be facing yet in the playoffs.
Right.
But them finishing the year at number 10, 20-5 record, you got to give a tip of the cap to the Bulldogs and everybody, Jimmy Evans and the whole team involved over there too. They put on a heck of a product. If you were able to get to a game, obviously keep an eye out for the playoffs because when the ABA playoffs kick off, it's going to be some fun basketball to watch.
Mm-hmm.
More information about the Bulldogs, BinghamtonBulldogs.com, or check them out on Facebook. That is the place to go check for all your Binghamton Bulldogs information moving forward. So can't wait to get playoff. We're talking playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to get to some playoff games. So hopefully the Dogs can make a good run to St. Louis. So let's get into those rounding the bases. And dare I say, well, I kick us off because Coach was talking that AB talk.
Uh-huh.
So let's get into it, Coach. Your thoughts.
I mean, it's crazy because this obviously we've talked about the Pittsburgh just
Drama.
unraveling that's been this organization all
the
year.
soap opera?
Yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. And now, you sit here and you talk about Antonio Bryant, one of the arguably top 5 wide receivers in the NFL.
Antonio Brown.
Brown, and you talk about him and you talk about the fact that he has Ben Roethlisberger as his quarterback and the falling out that's been there. Now, obviously, Big Ben said some things that, probably shouldn't and didn't need to be said in the media about AB, which is, what it was, he did it, but then obviously now AB, ever since the trade request has literally just started to lose his mind a little bit, and it's some of the things that he has said has been just questioning Big Ben and his timing on passes, and it's like, really, come on, you could have had Chase Daniels throwing you passes. You could have had
Blake Bortles.
Blake Bortles. You could have had Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those wild situations where it's like, okay, the relationship has dissolved.
And the thing of it is, there's got to be more than we know of going on behind the scenes, because I understand it from an on-field perspective of like, you're not up to standards, you're not making the runs you expect to be. Obviously, with a team like Pittsburgh, you expect them to be in like AFC Championship contention every year. Obviously, they didn't make it this past season, but there has to be something more to this, because you said it's a falling out. I'm going to correct you. I don't think it's a falling out. This is like a magnitude 10.0 earthquake.
Well, it's funny that we talk about this because obviously other affiliate, other companies now come out and talk about it, and other things have been said, and it's been said that AB, when he gets press coverage, actually can be easily knocked off of his routes. Mm-hmm. So that could have been part of the reason why Ben was having timing issues, because Ben doesn't, AB doesn't like the press coverage, and when he gets bumped off, and that's the scouting report on him, that when you press cover him, he will run off of his routes to get around you instead of trying to take the physicality and run his route. You want to talk about timing issues? I mean, that's definitely a catalyst for that.
Yeah,
it's definitely going to do it. And like I said, Larry Fitzgerald was talking on NFL.com about this, and to quote him in this,
which I love this quote, by the way,
via Sporting News, actually, that's what they're reporting, is to be able to play with an all-time quarterback like he's able to play with. I don't think he understands how good he has it. It can get tough out there. End quote. And that's what Fitzgerald said via Sporting News.
And he's played with some tough ones.
Yes.
So he would know.
Yes. So this is one of those just wild situations that, you as a team that you're looking to pick up AB,
Yeah.
and you're seeing these antics.
It's a red flag.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, this is going to be one of those situations where he has to have the perfect fit
Yeah.
if you're going to make this work. But is he going to get traded to a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger? Like, for where they're planning on sending him?
Pittsburgh will never do it. For him to get traded to a team with a better quarterback, the only way it'll happen is if it's in the NFC conference. It'll never happen in the AFC.
So here's my thought point here to the antics that AB's been doing. He saw what happened with Le'Veon.
Yeah.
He saw that play out.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's willing to sit you out the entire year. So is he almost escalating it now just to reassure that he does get traded?
I think that might be the case because you look at what Le'Veon, and Le'Veon was very much subtle. Was
very quiet.
Was very quiet, very much subtweeting. He
was doing a lot of subtweeting and social media
stuff. A lot of
stuff.
subtweeting, but he wasn't as vocal as AB's been. I think AB's reading the tea leaves a little bit and seeing I could very well be in the same situation. I don't want to sit out a full year.
I think he's forcing it. Yeah, I think he's forcing the hand.
I think he's definitely throwing stones or boulders into the pond to make a lot of noise so that, there's no way they can sit on him.
Because otherwise, had he had just sat there, they would have been like, maybe we can resolve this. We'll try and save this relationship. Yeah. We need him, blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing you know, now you're sitting out all year because you don't want to play.
Right, because you can imagine that Le'Veon might have thought the same thing of, they're going to need me at some point. They're going to come crawling back to me at some point. And they never did.
Right. And, I mean, you talk about going out to the NFC. It's like, well, San Francisco needs a wide receiver with their number one quarterback coming off an ACL injury. So it makes perfect sense to me.
It would make a lot of sense. And like I said, if he decides to trade the number one pick to Arizona for him, I mean, it's a gutsy move, but I'm just saying something could happen. But, I mean, I think Larry Fitzgerald hit it right on the head. I mean, like I said, the article that's on NFL.com, and like I said, it's via Sporting News. They have the link on there, too. If you don't realize how good you have it with an elite quarterback, I mean, I understand the relationship's kind of murky, and there's got to be some stuff that we don't know that's going on.
Yeah.
But to act like this, and then you're going to get traded somewhere that might not have an elite quarterback. Be careful what you wish for, because then if your numbers go down, like let's say hypothetically he falls off next year wherever he goes,
which real could
which
happen.
Is a realistic thought. What's he going to ask to immediately get traded out of there again? Does this media circus start up again?
Well, I don't think so.
I mean, it's obviously Pittsburgh's asking for a first round pick, but I mean, a lot of news media sites have been reporting that he's really statistically wise is only worth a third or fourth. Mm-hmm. Now, his name and stature is worth a first round pick, but really, you're looking at I'm not sure, 28, 28-year-old wide receiver, which history shows outside of Jerry Rice and Tim Brown that after 28, wide receivers statistically and Randy Moss drop dramatically.
I mean, it's the case of Father Time.
Right.
That just you take so much abuse to your body, just the physicality of the sport. It catches up with you. And sometimes people can stretch it out longer than others. I mean, for AB, like I said, I'm kind of kidding. I'm just throwing my wild sarcastic, that he's going to get traded for the number one pick overall.
Right.
But I could definitely see him get packaged for a couple threes. And easy.
Well, because I mean, Pittsburgh's not taking anything less than a first.
Oh, they're nor should they, because if they have the quote unquote best wide receiver in the league, and it's debatable.
I mean, I would probably give it to him.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a highly debatable argument. If Pittsburgh is smart, you trade him for number one and a number of package picks, because then if they could get in there and there's the wide receiver that was lighting up the draft, Mr. Metcalf.
Yeah.
If you pair him with Juju next year, woo. That's right there. You've now obviously got a very gifted wide receiver that you can definitely build off of, and you got an established one with Schuster-Smith. That if you do lose AB, you might fall off a little bit, but Pittsburgh still has Roethlisberger behind center. That makes up a lot of ground. So moving forward with that, it's going to get real interesting on March 13th what starts, because somebody's going to make a trade somewhere. And then obviously that's going to have a ramification on the AB situation.
I mean, franchise tags and all this stuff's already coming out. Like March 13th is going to be, at 12:01 is going to be crazy because there's going to be a lot of moves.
Yeah, definitely keep the eye on the Twitter for that day. Oh, because there's going to be some movement going on. Pat, what's your round in the base this week?
Well, we're going to keep it in the NFL because, I do rag on the Atlanta Falcons a little bit for the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but I do have to give them credit. They do have easily one of the best, if not the best, stadium pricing when it comes to their food selection. For those who don't know, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which opened just last year, I want to say, has what they call fan-friendly pricing for food, where, if you've ever been to a baseball game, football game, any pro sporting event, food prices are a little high. But when you go to the Atlanta Falcons games down in, or any game that's in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium down there in Atlanta, they have what they call fan-friendly pricing, where a hot dog is $2. You look at, nachos is like $3-4. Well, what they're doing is they're making them even fan-friendlier, if that was even possible. And I got to give a little applause to them, because they are dropping all their food prices by 50 cents, making them even cheaper for fans to go to the game and not really have to break the bank to have a good time and eat some good food at a football game.
Yeah, that's definitely a smart move by Atlanta to do.
Yeah.
I don't struggle with that at one bit.
No.
Anytime you can make it very affordable at a pro sporting game for food and concessions, I'm all for it. Coach, I know you've been chomping at the bit about this one.
Well, so rounding the bases, we're going to Lacrosse, everybody, so, hold on. The NCAA today had suspended Tahoka Nanticoke, who is a Albany attackman, for college here, Albany Great Danes, for a social media post where he had tagged a company that does stringing of sticks. He was complimenting the stick, his stick that he has, and the NCAA subsequently had suspended him. Now, he was suspended on Saturday, which the Albany Great Danes had to play Cornell, Big Red, in kind of a rivalry game, two New York teams, in a big matchup, of top 25 teams. And unfortunately, Tahoka couldn't participate in that game. Albany ends up losing by 18-17 against Cornell at Cornell. Sunday, Scott Marr, head coach, does a press conference saying that, he had been suspended indefinitely for a social media post tagging the stick company. Well, Lacrosse Twitter was up in arms. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge NCAA thing because it's just, this isn't the time or place, but, obviously the 20-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, just tagging a company, not really thinking two things of it, to get suspended indefinitely, by the NCAA was, kind of a typical NCAA move when you talk about the money that they bring in, Zion Williams, the Shoegate, that whole thing comes to mind. But while we're recording the show, the NCAA has reversed the suspension while we were recording. So I was red hot coming into this. I had a big pipe bomb. I was going to go in on it, but the NCAA got it right. He is going to be reinstated. He's going to be able to play Saturday, and I will subsequently be able to call the game when they play BU on the 23rd, which was why I was so upset, because I have not got to see Tahoka play yet. He's brilliant on the field, so I was really mad that I wasn't going to get to see him play live, especially calling his game. But all things in the NCAA world were right for once, and the NCAA did the right thing. So kudos to them for once.
Yeah, it's always a questionable thing. I mean, just how they have a lot of rules and regulations you have to follow, and even if it's a nice complimentary tweet,
yeah,
we live in that day and age where it's like you can't do that.
Right.
I mean, and like I say, if he's just saying, hey, thank you for making a great stick, it can get looked at a lot of different ways.
All in the name of amateurism. That's what I kept saying.
No, but it's a slippery slope to walk. And
it's a whole show we could cut on this.
We could go deep diving on this. I mean, if we really wanted to, but just at the end of the day, I'm glad the NCAA made the right decision with this, because to punish a kid for, it wasn't like he was putting anything real spicy out there.
It wasn't a sponsorship. It wasn't anything. It was just tagging the company who strung his stick.
Yeah, which I personally would not struggle with unless it was violation and it turns out he was getting money from him.
Well, yeah, and exactly. That's what I think. That's why they launched the investigation and they suspended him. But they should have, when they suspended him, it should have been just released why they did it instead of this incognito, secretive type of thing, which I think is what raised so many arms. They should have just said, hey, listen, we're launching this because we want to make sure he wasn't paid to tag the company. But
yeah, if there was something illegal going on, then they have a right to. But
exactly.
But obviously they made right on the decision. Then obviously they didn't feel anything was wrong, and obviously now the quota is set.
Free Tahoka, unfortunately, was a very short-lived hashtag that I was happy. I was full bore on it, and now it's dead. So.
Yeah, well, but you know what? At least it had a happy ending from it, so
right.
You can't go wrong with that. That's all we got for this week. So for Padawan Jay,
thank you.
For Coach Duffy,
good night and good luck.
I'm your host, Kenem. Thank you as always for listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour #ODPH podcast. We'll see you next time.